News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskiy says he agrees with European leaders. European leaders saying international borders must not be changed by force. Vice President J.D. Vance is meeting with European leaders this weekend. NBC says the White House is considering inviting Zelenskiy to Alaska, where President Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin will hold a summit on the future of Ukraine on Friday. This would be the Russian president's first meeting with a major Western leader since Russia invaded Ukraine more than 3 years ago. President Trump has suggested a peace deal could involve exchanging territory. Fed Governor Michelle Bowman calling for 3 interest rate cuts this year from the Fed starting in September to avoid erosion in labor market conditions and also to reduce the chance of a larger policy correction. Last month, Bowman was one of 2 dissenters when the Fed held rates steady. Bowman also calling for reforms in community banks.
Community banks are the cornerstone of the banking and financial system, supporting local communities and their customers.
And Bowman at the Kansas Bankers Association in Colorado Springs. We could see some signs of inflation at the consumer level soon. CPI report coming Tuesday, and economists say consumers probably experienced a slight pickup in underlying inflation in July. That's as retailers raise prices on items subject to higher import duties. President Trump says he'll hold a press conference tomorrow at the White House to address what he calls violent crime in Washington, D.C. Bloomberg's Hadriana Lowenkron says one important thing to note, though, is
we're seeing that violent crime. This was data that came out early in January. So looking at 2024 is at a 30-year low. But it does come after there have been kind of a handful of incidents that the president has really used to, make this claim that the nation's capital is, ridden with crime.
And Lowenkron also says those recent incidents include one where a prominent former member of the president's DOJ team was attacked. President Trump has directed a ramp-up of federal law enforcement led by the U.S. Park Police and involving the FBI, DEA, ATF, Homeland Security, U.S. Marshals, and others. For starters, this is a 7-day operation. Rare Sunday meeting of the UN Security Council today to discuss the Gaza situation. International condemnation growing over Israel's decision for a military takeover of Gaza City. Palestinian Foreign Minister Varsan Agabekian calling the decision by Israel disappointing. He says an independent Palestinian state is the only way to solve the conflict.
We're not asking for anything that is above international law. We are peace seekers. We are human beings who deserve to live. It's about time to materialize our state.
Meantime, in Tel Aviv, tens of thousands of protesters marching. Organizers calling it one of the largest gatherings in the city since the start of Israel's war with Hamas almost 2 years ago. Anti-government protesters demanding the return of hostages. Hostage families, meantime, warning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu they will pursue him if the hostages are harmed as part of his plan to take over Gaza City. In Nagasaki, memorials, remembrances, and services as the city marked 80 years this weekend since the U.S. dropped a second atomic bomb on Japan, killing an additional 70,000 people, either instantly or from radiation exposure, after the bombing of Hiroshima a few days earlier. And in Central California, the Gifford fire continues to expand. Better picture for the Canyon fire near Los Angeles, where evacuation orders have been lifted as firefighters make progress. We're hearing CATL has suspended production at a major lithium mine in China's Jiangxi province for at least 3 months. One source says that's after the company failed to extend a key mining permit. They could get an extension, according to the source, but are preparing for the suspension to last months. Washington Post says Walmart knew about an explosion risk in water bottles for years before taking action. The retailer took action last month, about 7 years after learning lids, according to the Post, forcefully ejected and ended up damaging the vision of 2 people. New report says most of us in America get more than half our calories from ultra-processed food, although apparently that's an improvement. Bloomberg's Amy Morris.
Although we are consuming a slightly smaller share of ultra-processed foods than we used to, more than half of what we eat is overprocessed. Things like burgers and sandwiches and sweet baked goods, savory snacks, pizza, sweetened drinks. Ultra-processed foods have been linked to chronic health problems.
Bloomberg's Amy Morris reporting. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg.